Welcome back to Newsmax Now. We want to take a moment and focus our attention towards Greece, whose economic struggles have dominated much of the global market in recent weeks. And earlier today, after weeks of negotiations, the country's parliament passed new measures in exchange for financial aid worth $94 billion for the country. But many Greeks strongly oppose the move and let their opinions be known, as you can see, during these violent protests which broke out on the streets of Athens last night. And joining us live now here on Newsmax Now for more on the Greek debt crisis is Dr. Benjamin Powell. He is a senior fellow at the Independent Institute, and thanks so much for joining us.
No problem. Good to be with you.
Doctor, you have a new column out now in which you argue that Greece should learn from Ireland. Briefly tell us how so.
Yeah, so more of these interventions with the IMF and the bailouts, they're not the answer for Greece. Greece needs to fundamentally reform its economy. And the model it can look to is Ireland from a little bit more than 20 years ago. In 1985, Ireland had debt just like Greece does. I think they were 116% of GDP. Greece is up to 180%. Ireland was a big spender. The government consumed over half of the economy, just like it does in Greece. And they were into a fiscal crisis. And instead of taking an IMF bailout there, Ireland made fundamental reforms where they slashed the size of government in their economy. In their first year, they made cuts across the board, name a category. They were cutting it, and they eliminated their primary deficit the first year. They followed it up the next year with even bigger budget cuts, and they started to shrink the size of government in their economy. Now, unlike Greece, Ireland was starting from a better base with greater economic freedoms in other areas. It was really just big government spending that was their problem. And once Ireland made those cuts to government spending, coupled with good protection of private property rights, a decent rule of law, freedom to trade internationally, and a tolerable level of business regulation, their economy started growing. By 1990, their debt was back under control. Government had shrunk to under 40% of the size of the economy. They followed this up in the 90s with tax cuts that further shrunk the size of government in the economy. They became the fifth freest economy in the world and had dramatic growth. Over 5% average annual real growth in the first half of the 90s, 10% real annual growth in the second half of the 90s. It was a dramatic transformation. And Greece would do well to look at them and think about how they could make more far-ranging free market reforms.
Now, Doctor, despite passing these new measures, even Germany's finance minister says Greece might be better off leaving the euro. He says that an exit could give the country some flexibility to reduce its debt. Do you agree?
If they leave the euro, what they should do is maintain a free trade relationship with the rest of Europe. That's the good part of the European Union. They also would have to get their own currency under control and make it credible that they're not going to inflate in the future. Right now, the euro is giving them partial credibility on that. But more fundamentally, the problem with Greece is that they have a big bloated government, a culture that depends on government transfers and lavish pensions, and a stifling business environment that makes it very difficult to start a business in Greece. Greece, in terms of ranking countries in economic freedom, ranks 84th in the world. It's behind most of the rest of its European neighbors. Greece's problems aren't the euro or what the finance minister in Germany or the IMF are doing to them. Greece's problems are Greece's own bad economic policy that don't support entrepreneurship and economic freedom. That's what they need to fix.
Well, we'll see what happens. Doctor, thanks so much for joining us here on Newsmax Now. It was great to have you. We appreciate your insight. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Greece. You know, I was talking to somebody, I won't mention any names, but somebody that works here at Newsmax, and they said part of that is just kind of Greece's culture. They don't like paying taxes, so.
Well, but as you heard Dr. Powell mention there,
from someone with a
it just doesn't work. When the government sucks up so much of the economy, it just doesn't work, and we're seeing that right now. An interesting interview yesterday also on the Steve Malzberg show right here on Newsmax TV. Larry Kudlow, formerly of CNBC, now has his own thing going on, says that Donald Trump would make a perfect candidate to fix Greece's economic woes.
Yeah, Donald Trump continuing to make waves, reportedly daring MSNBC host Lawrence O'Donnell, did you see this?
Yep.
To a challenge after the talk show host called him a liar. Take a listen.
If his salary is not certified to be correct, he will bet a year of his salary versus a year of said host's salary.
Lawrence's.
And if Donald Trump is not telling the truth about how much money he made off of The Apprentice, then he will give said host 1 year's salary. If he is telling the truth, then said host owes Donald Trump a year of his television salary.
That's a challenge.
That is a challenge, you know, and Joe Scarborough, his hair looks really good there. He either just got out of a convertible or he had the blow dryer out.
Really?
For that hair, straight up and back.
You'll have to ask him.
It's something to be inspired by.
I would say I have to take Trump at his word. That's a pretty hefty price to pay if you're wrong. Would you do it?
Heck no.
Heck no.
I would not bet against the Donald in those types of situations.
Absolutely.
Donald also kind of threw in a little jab, too, and said that The Apprentice was a declining show. A declining show, so we'll see. More to come here on Newsmax Now, including your headlines and punchlines.